Welcome back. All right, so we are up to the Calgary Flames and my look at teams that have missed the playoffs. They finished this season 38, 39, and 5, 81 points. And while it was disappointing on the ice, the off the ice talk around Calgary's been really negative for quite some time, and it dates back to when Matthew Tkachuk left. They lose Tkachuk, then they lose Gaudreau. This season, of course, they trade Lindholm to Vancouver. Now, the Kuzmenko for Lindholm deal, I think, worked out for both teams. I think Lindholm has given the Canucks in the playoffs what they were looking for from him, and I think that Kuzmenko has a pretty bright future with Calgary. The one thing you have to keep in mind with Kuzmenko is that defensively, it's an adventure with Kuzmenko, but if you can find the right guys to play with him, you might be able to offset the defensive shortcomings that he has. Vancouver was never able to figure that out, and his back checking not being there is part of the reason why he's no longer in Vancouver. But this is a team that, again, dropped from 93 points last year to 81 points this year. But considering all the drama and all the players who've exited, it's not necessarily a surprise. Their draft lottery odds, 5% that they draft first, 5.2% that they draft second, 0.2% chance that they draft third. Yes, they're another one of those teams that has a very small percentage chance they draft third, but it's still there. All right. Ninth, 64.4% chance they draft ninth, 23.5% chance they draft 10th, and a 1.7% chance they drop to 11th. But in the event they drop to 11th, that first round draft pick goes to Montreal this year. If not, it becomes a 2025 draft pick going to Montreal, and it's unprotected at that point. But for Calgary, they don't have a lot of draft capital. They added a first-round pick from Vancouver this year. Dallas, they get a second-round pick from. Vegas, they got a third-round pick, though there's conditions on that. And a fourth-round pick from New Jersey. There's conditions on that as well. So they've added some draft picks, but they're going to lose what's probably going to be a pretty good prospect, either this draft or the next one. Probably the next one, since it is top 10 protected. So their coach, Ryan Huska, nice guy. There was no talk of a split in the locker room, none of the drama that we saw last year. But again, if you look at this team, you can tell the superstar nature of the franchise they had going for them a couple years ago is kind of gone. Craig Conroy, as general manager, I think has done as well as he could through his first 12 months. But this is a team that definitely needs a bit of a kick if they're going to get back into the playoff chase. I think that's the plan. We'll see if that's the plan. Even though they sold off players who had expiring contracts, it doesn't feel like it was just a full-on teardown, and I'm not sure that that's where this team goes. Their goal scoring, disappointing. 20th in goals for. They were 23rd in goals allowed. Their goals allowed is interesting because there are those who think that Markstrom's absolutely fantastic. There are those who disagree. I think Markstrom had a very good year. Yes, at times he can be overhyped on Calgary broadcasts. I agree with that. There were nights where I thought Markstrom wasn't playing very well, and he would make one pretty good save, and then they would show that highlight like 3 or 4 times and say, see, Markstrom's still in the game. He's still playing well. And it's like, yep, that was a good save, but what about those goals? But either way, Markstrom's given them good, steady goaltending. But the goaltending we're going to come back to because there's still that question of whether or not he sticks around. Now, playoff droughts reach 2 seasons. So they had, for a while there going, it felt like they were in the playoffs one year, out the next, and this and that. And now they've been out 2 straight years. And they started 2-7-1. Both Alberta teams had their struggles to start the season. The difference being Edmonton figured it out and turned it around. Calgary did not. Edmonton didn't have players who wanted out. Calgary did. So Hanifin leaving, Lindholm leaving, and various others. It's felt like it's one after another out the door for Calgary. And while they've tried to offset that by bringing guys in, it hasn't really worked out all that well with some of these cases. So they were 31, 26, and 5 on March 7th. I wanted to put that on the board because their final record ends up being 1 game below 500, but it's a little bit deceptive in that that's after the deadline. They've sold off, and the team's efforts down the stretch, not necessarily great. They knew they were out of the playoffs. But before they knew they were out of the playoffs, their play wasn't that bad. And this is a team that definitely could be a 90-point team next year. Can they get to, say, if 95 is the cutoff for the playoffs, can they be a playoff team in the West? We shall see. They do surprise both ways. They surprise in terms of having really good years out of nowhere, and they surprise in having really disappointing seasons after those good years. So, yeah, your guess is as good as mine on what we're going to see from them next year. Nazem Kadri was their leading scorer, 29 goals, 46 assists, 75 points in 82 games. I thought he had a really good year. I will say that. I thought he had a pretty good season. Sharon Govich had an excellent year. 82 games, 31 goals, 28 assists, 59 points. Blake Coleman had a great first half, quieter second half, but 30 goals, 24 assists, 54 points in 78 games. They were both very good. The problem is, if you look around the NHL, point totals of 75, 59, and 54 for your top three players, lower than most other teams in the league, and definitely adds up to a team being 20th in the standings in terms of goals scored in the National Hockey League. Now, players 22 and younger, the made appearances I would like to talk about today start with Connor Zary. Zary, 63 games, 14 goals, 20 assists, 34 points. Looked very good at times this season. Looking forward to seeing if he can stay healthy next year and play all 82 games, what kind of totals he puts up. Coronado, it was a bit more of a misadventure than expected with Coronado. 34 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points. They need him to take that next step. Pelche just played 13 games with them this year. 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. So that's a bit of a surprise that his totals when he did play weren't necessarily better. But again, they need their young guys to have a fully healthy season and productive at the NHL level. Jan Kuznetsov just got into the 1 game. Cole Schwindt got into 4 games. They're both seen as being a part of Calgary's future. We'll see if they're more prominent this coming season. But now we come back to the goaltending question. So Markstrom, 23, 23, and 2 with a .905 save percentage. If you look at the advanced stats, he had an excellent season. And that's where it gets interesting because from a traditional stats perspective, he was okay. From an advanced stats perspective, he was fantastic. Vladar, bit of a rough year for Vladar. 8-9-2 record, 882 save percentage. We'll see if he's still in Calgary next year. I think it's going to depend on whether or not Markstrom's there next year. And Markstrom's been kind of on sticking around. And so if Markstrom gets traded, odds are we'll have Vladar and Wolf as the tandem. Wolf 7-7-1 with an 893 save percentage. There's always the possibility that the Flames do something really radical and decide, you know what, we're going to trade Markstrom and we're going to find a taker for Vladar and go with a completely new tandem next year. There's always that chance. I don't think it happens. I think the last time a team did that, I want to say Carolina was the last team I can remember doing that, where just, the goalies are out. We're bringing in new goalies, but we'll see. For the Calgary Flames, again, Markstrom had a good year. If they can repair that relationship, I think they should. I think it's a mutually beneficial one when the Flames are doing well. Yeah, when they're not doing well, that contract doesn't look great. Now on their way, Hanzik, who made his AHL debut just, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. He's a center or a left winger. And Hunter Brustevich, who of course was picked up in the trade with Vancouver. He's a defenseman, and he's probably going to be a top 4 at some point. So I better figure out. That's why I put it on the board there, Brustevich, because I wanted to make sure I didn't mispronounce it. Because when you look at it, it's like, can I buy another vowel? Like it's a name that you look at and go, yeah. So this guy got drafted. I seem to remember when the Canucks drafted him, thinking I don't know that I'm going to be able to say that name. And now he's Calgary property, so we'll see if it gets any better for me. Their pending UFA list is not that long because they traded most of their pending UFAs, which was the right call. Greer, so 4th liner there. Shillington had a really good, solid season, I thought, when he got back to playing. I would love to see him stay in Calgary. It's a good story. Gilbert, Osterley spent most of the season in the minors, so probably not coming back. And then pending restricted free agents, you have a Hochik, who was picked up from San Jose. Pelche, so young rookie here. And then Schwindt, part of that trade with Florida. Klapka's up there. He had a goal and an appearance with Flames this year. Odds are I would say they keep him around. He's about 9'4". And then you have Kuznetsov, Solovyov, and Wolf. So Wolf, a restricted free agent. I would think he gets probably a 2-year extension this summer. But I think with how he played for them, after getting a chance, I think he's earned a one-way contract. And then you figure out of these 3 goalies, which 2 or which 1 you're keeping or how you're going to figure that out. But Wolf looks like he's going to be the guy. He'll take over from Saros as the goaltender that people always talk about his height and almost nothing else. It is insane to me how often it comes up. Because you don't hear it about defensemen. You don't, like every time Torrey Krug goes out there, you don't hear it. And now the 5'9" Torrey Krug. Actually, I saw him in the hallway. I think he's closer to 5'7". You know, it's odd for a defenseman it's so weird how we obsess on height with goaltenders, and it doesn't get mentioned if a smaller defenseman's doing well or a smaller forward. I get it because they can't cover as much of the net, but that's where the athletic, the flexibility, the reflexes come in. But anyways, we'll see what they do there, and we'll see what the costs are like with these free agents, because there isn't anybody who stands out as like getting a huge raise, and their cap space on July the 1st, $19,824,167. It might be a good idea for Calgary on July the 1st to find a player who is wanting to go to Calgary. Have a good storyline through this summer. Have a feel-good story. Have somebody show, yep, no, I want to be in Calgary, and not sign a contract that's way too much money. I don't have Uyghur's contract up here because Uyghur had a 20-goal year. Uyghur played pretty well. I would say he justified his contract. Huberdeau, not as much. Definitely not a top 3 scorer. And the fact that Huberdeau has been kind of a disaster in Calgary is interesting, since Goudreau's been kind of a disaster in Columbus. It feels like a couple of players might have made wrong choices. And again, understanding that that's their right to do that, and not every situation is guaranteed success. But at $10.5 million until 2031, that contract's not going anywhere. So they're going to have to figure this out with Huberdeau. He needs to be a top 3 scorer. He needs to be at least a point per game for that contract to work. And so far, it has not. Kadri, $7 million cap hit until 2029. I would say Kadri was worth $7 million this season. We'll see if he's worth that next season. And since it's until 2029, I thought it was worthwhile to point out. Plus, since I knew I'd be talking about Markstrom, probably more than once, $6 million cap hit until 2026. And don't forget, he's 34 years of age. So by goaltending standards, it's not that old. But yeah, 34, 35, you're probably not looking at a guy who can play 55, 60 games as a starter. And I think it will make it a little bit more difficult to move him. He's still got the 2 years left at $6 million per season. So I've gone over the draft thing, so we'll see how all that turns out. And I mean, there's always the chance that they drop to 11th in the draft, and then that draft pick is gone, which might be better, because there's the possibility they're looking at a top 10 draft pick next year, depending on what happens in this offseason. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. If you're a Flames fan, are you excited about the future? Do you think, you know what, a lot of guys have left? We'll see. Or do you think that the Flames are going to go through a retool/rebuild that might continue this coming season? I don't think so. I think they can absolutely put together a pretty decent roster that can push for a playoff spot. There were times this year where they weren't that far out. It's just a matter of making the right moves in the offseason. So let me know what moves you think they should make and which ones they shouldn't. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.